Welcome everybody. This is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we are here in my living room in Bolton Hill for another one of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today we're going to jump right in and talk about Davidge Hall. Davidge Hall was built in 1812. The University of Maryland Medical School had been founded by the General Assembly in Annapolis in 1807. So it took a few years, but they got their signature building in 1812. And I'm going to say a superlative here, and I'm going to try to be very careful with my words. I got in a little bit of hot water earlier videos with superlatives that I still think probably more or less were true, but I'm going to be very careful with this one and say that it is the oldest building that has been continuously in use for medical teaching in the United States. How about that? Oldest building that's been in continuous use for medical teaching in the United States, 1812, and that's pretty neat. There's another superlative. The architect for it was Robert Cary Long Sr. He was the first native-born architect in Maryland. So here we have our second superlative. I think I'm correct on that. And you know at least one of his other buildings. We talked about it earlier, and that's the Peel Museum, which is the oldest building in America built as a museum. So how about that? We've got 3 superlatives, 1 architect, and they're all in Baltimore. All right, so actually, if you want to know another one of Robert Long's works, if you know where Hamilton Street is, the Hamilton Street Men's Club on the southern part of Mount Vernon, just west of Charles Street, that row of houses was done by him. And if you want a really neat place, if you're driving around looking at places, go drive past there, but do it slowly because the houses are really, really great. All right, but back to Davidge Hall. When it was built in 1812, it was a statement. This was a time when the medical profession did not have the high esteem that it does today. There were real quacks out there, and your doctor, who knows where he got his training or education, probably not formally. So the building of the building in 1812 was a statement that that medical schools were here to stay, and there was going to be a professional medical education field, and that it was. The building, in addition to being wonderful on the outside, classical revival, it looks like it could be in the Acropolis for sure. On the inside, it's really neat and has a lot of its details. And I'm going to say thank you to a friend of mine and the person who probably knows more about Davidge Hall than anybody, and that's a gentleman named Larry Petroff, who's the executive director of the University of Maryland Medical Alumni Society, which oversees and cares for the building. So thank you, Larry. The inside on the first floor is a wonderful room called Chemical Hall, and it's a semicircle auditorium with seats that face the front to watch medical experiments going on, and it's got the original brick kilns in there that were used to heat up whatever experiments they were doing. Really, really neat. Above it is maybe even a more spectacular space. It's a theater in the round. Think of something like the Roman Colosseum, except on a smaller scale. But above it is a wonderful dome ceiling. And in the middle, the professor would roll out whatever surgery was going on of the day. This is called Surgical Hall, and do the surgery in front of, say, a couple hundred medical students who would peer down from steep-sided sets of seats and look at it. Imagine if you were one of the surgical patients and you were conscious at that time, getting wheeled into this crazy circular theater to have everybody peer down and watch what was going on for you. Another building up on the second floor, or another room up on the second floor, is where they did the dissections. And this room is actually quite hard to find. And it's that way on purpose because the professors who were doing dissections and the medical students knew that the public at large really, really didn't like that. At the time, the way that medical schools got cadavers was basically by body snatching. And there's a couple wonderful articles by Baltimore's own Tara Piatilla in the Smithsonian magazine talking about this. They didn't call it body snatching. The folks who did it they were called Resurrectionists. Isn't that a great term, the Resurrectionists? And Baltimore was a hub of Resurrectionists because A, we had a growing medical profession and medical education profession, and B, we had the B&O Railroad. And these folks would go out at night and dig up freshly buried bodies, and then they would put them in barrels of hard alcohol, probably Maryland rye whiskey, and they would ship them, and we know from some of the articles, they would ship them as far away as St. Louis and Atlanta, and even up to Maine. So these bodies traveled a long distance. And we know what happened to the bodies at the end of the day. The bodies were taken out of the barrel, and they were used as cadavers for medical education. education. And then you're going to ask, well, what happened to the whiskey? And there's a little bit of a debate in the historic community about what happened, but there are definitely instances where that either the poor med students who were so desperate for a break from medical education would drink the whiskey, or the folks, the professors who were getting the barrels, made a little bit of a side profit by selling it off. And so the next time somebody offers you a stiff drink, you can know where that term comes from, and just think about that when you're having your next stiff drink. Let me wrap up by saying that one of the neat things about Davidge Hall is that every University of Maryland medical student who has graduated has gone through the building in one form or another. And today it's used for the graduating class saying the Hippocratic Oath, launching them into their Maryland or into their medical careers. And let me just read you a few folks who have come through those hallowed halls. And the next time you drive past, you can think of the great building, but also think of the incredible accomplishments that folks associated with it have made. Let me start, and I got just a list of 3 or 4 here. Robert Bartholow, the first who did the first detailed study of how electrical stimulation impacts the brain and then impacts motor skills. Paul Offit, he invented the rotavirus vaccine. And I'll conclude with a gentleman named Theodore Woodward, who won the Nobel Prize for finding a cure for typhoid fever. Thanks so much, and we will see you tomorrow. Or I'm sorry, we'll see you Friday.